This time on Holy Ghost Notes.
A 2-year-old could play that frickin' thing.
Wait, that part sounds really dumb.
The existential.
Unclean.
Existential.
You need to pray harder?
Existential. My God.
Hey, what's going on? This is Matt Greiner and Tim Anderson, and you're listening to Holy Ghost Notes.
Hey. Good job with that, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
It was really good.
I appreciate that. It's good to be on here with you again. We've gone probably 2.5 weeks till since the last episode where we talked, and you've been on vacation and been traveling. What's it been like on the road in Florida, right?
Yeah. So we flew there, thankfully. So not much road time, but it was fun. We went to Disney a couple days. Stayed at a resort with my parents, which was really nice because I think Julianne and I spent more alone time together in this week that we were away, more so than we had in the entirety of my first son's life. So in the last 4 years, I think this was the most time that we actually spent, in a confined amount of time. I wouldn't measure it against all of our date nights or whatever, but in total, it was like a week kind of away from the kids. We went to Epcot. Just the two of us, and it was the Food and Wine Festival. So I don't know if you've ever been to Epcot before, but you can eat and drink around the world. And,
I have. That was fun.
Yeah, we've done it in the past. It was a lot of fun, but this time they had a number of food trucks for additional countries in between the actual countries. So we were hitting everything. Ate all types of spices and stuff that did a number on our stomachs, but drinking all
Are you
types
recovered
of
yet
beers
now
and
that you're
stuff.
back? Or are you
I'm
still
good now.
getting back
It
in?
It wasn't awful. The next day was a little rough, but after that it was fine. But yeah, it was nice. Definitely good to be back. Wasn't sure how the flying would be with two kids, but that worked out without a hitch. So a lot to be thankful for right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, welcome back. It's good to have you. I'm actually going to be leaving here pretty soon.
That's right.
The next episode will come out on September 10th, and I'll be leaving September 9th on the Leveler Tour.
Yeah.
So our first show's in Philly, and we cycle around the nation. I'll be home November 1st.
That's cool.
So this will be the last episode that we do from my studio.
Yeah.
And after this, I have big shout out to Sweetwater, by the way.
Yes.
They sent me a bunch of gear. This is one of the pieces they sent me. They also sent a nice case, and they sent me the interface I'm going to need to record from the back lounge of the bus while Jake is getting changed out of his sweaty show clothing. Hey, man, if you thought that it was crazy scheduling stuff now, just wait till I'm on tour when it's
I was just thinking that.
I'm free. It's I'm free right now, and you're like, Tim, it's Matt, it's 2:15 in the morning. I'm like, well, I'm in California. I'm really sorry, man. This is the best I can do.
It's okay, man. It's okay. I remember I've taken this time for granted.
Same.
You being home, farming, having kind of a flexible schedule for the most part.
Absolutely.
Because it has worked in our advantage for getting these done. But
it has.
But I'm excited for you to be back on the road, man. I mean, just knowing you and knowing how much you enjoy it, it's been a part of you for so long. I feel like you're getting back to, not that you dismissed who you are at all in this time, but I feel like you've actually built upon it with the mattgrinerlessons.com stuff and the conversations we've had on the podcast. But I'm excited for you to be back on the road because there's this you experience different things and you meet different people and a lot can happen in a tour. Lots of stories can be pulled from a tour.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm excited
we'll have
those.
more content to some more fodder to talk about. I was talking to my girlfriend Annie the other night. We were having dinner together, and I was telling her when I'm on tour, here's probably how my schedule's going to look. And we talked a little bit about hey, I haven't actually been on tour while we've been dating.
Right.
We've been really fortunate to have this time uninterrupted for our relationship. And I feel really lucky to have this time. I lately, God's been doing a lot in my heart in two ways. One is, and we haven't really talked about this Tim, but I think we should in the future. God has been bringing me out of this place of cynicism towards Christianity. There's still a level of like trust but verify, but there's I see the good in Christianity, and I see the truth in it in a way that I haven't allowed myself to see in the past 5 years or so. Yeah. So anyway, beyond that, the other thing is that when there's something that's coincidental, air quotes, that happens in my life, it's much easier for me to say, well, actually, that seems like there was a reason for this. Whereas in the past, it's been much more, well, I don't know, like that probably just happened for no good reason at all. And so I think to that point, I've been home for a year and a half, and I've been dating, and I've had just the ability to get to know someone and build a schedule and a routine. That's really benefited me and the people in my life that I care about. And I don't think that that's just a coincidence personally.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that you're saying that. I mean, because I feel like I have been taken to a very similar place, spiritually speaking, even to the point where like we're like my wife and I are actively looking into church again, which was something that I had really ultimately gotten to the point where I had dismissed it to, where I'd be like, okay, if I never stepped foot in a church again,
same.
Which was crazy for someone who had grown up in the church and had been there every Sunday, but I, similarly have been brought to the same place. And something interesting about coincidence is that, and I don't know exactly when, but the word coincidence didn't exist in Bible times. There's no translation for the word coincidence. It came into being at some point, I want to say in the 1700s. Don't quote me on that. I could be
Someone's
very wrong.
Googling right now.
Someone told me this, and I did look into it when they told me, and sure enough, there's no translation for the word coincidence. In certain languages, there still is no translation for the word coincidence. So it's something that we've developed to try to explain the unexplainable, which is actually funny because that ties in a little bit into what I'd like to talk about in our faith topic today.
Well, I've actually noticed about you in the past couple months that
have you?
Yeah, I've noticed, not the coincidence, I don't think, but maybe it's not a coincidence. But
maybe not.
I've noticed I've noticed that you're just more you have a softer tone when you talk about Christianity. And I've noticed that in myself. And I'm really happy that I'm in that place, actually, that I've grown out of that. And I think the time that I was very cynical, and to your point, like I didn't want to be in a church, I didn't want to hang around Christians. I think that part of my life was important for me to go through. And obviously it was a product of some things that I experienced, but I don't want to live there. And what I realized was, I was telling somebody about this, I don't want to be 50 and be that guy. And there's a couple people in my life who are in like their 50s, who are just very, very cynical.
Bitter,
the church did this and the church did that. And, if we're not careful, I mean, I'm 35. It's going to be me. It's going to be us. And so I'm glad that God's been doing a work in me in that way. And, but back to what I was saying earlier to my girlfriend. So I was talking to her about all this stuff, and she said, "What do you think that I can do for you when you're on tour to support you?" And I was like, that is a really good question. And it's kind of hard for me to actually remember what it's like to be on tour. Yeah. It's been so long. But I think the best thing is, because my personality is very focused on what I'm doing and all in, what's important for me is for you to remind me where I'm from and what's here at home, what I've established. Because ultimately, whatever happens on tour happens, good and bad, hard and easy, and I'm coming home. And this is really what matters at the end of the day.
Right.
And I said, it would mean a lot to me if you go over to my farm while my dad's harvesting corn and just take a video. I mean, not only because I'm missing harvest and I love farming, but because that's home, you know?
Sure.
And when I'm on tour and I'm away, part of the challenge for me is reminding myself that the world's bigger than where I am that day on tour, or what that show's like, or what's going on our tour bus. And in that way, it helps me be a nicer person and do the right thing, because
grounds you a little bit.
It's not as critical. It's not the end of the world. So we'll see. You know, I'm flying Annie out to the West Coast about halfway through the tour. She's never been to California.
Wow.
Never been to California.
Actually, now that I think about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
never been out that far.
You're welcome to come along. You're not riding on the bus or in my bunk or anything like that, but I'll see you. I'd like to hang out with you. Yeah, like at Disney, you know.
Yeah.
From afar.
You're the character up on the balcony. Hey, Matt.
Unclean.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, not to backpedal, but I think you said something, you know, that there's a reason, and I think it's funny. So for any of you listening right now who have kind of been on this journey from episode 1 of us like aggressively bashing the church to now where we're a little bit more, you know, we're a little bit softer on the church, I would say. I think for me, it's been a very good experience, despite the pain, despite the hurt. You know, and I, as much as I hate to admit it, throughout this podcast, I was in pain, and a lot of the aggression came from that pain. And I think what I realize is, you know, humans are very, very imperfect, regardless of what they like to portray. And often, for whatever reason, church culture likes to portray perfection. And it's the furthest thing from what the church should portray. It should be portraying humility and honesty. And if the church had taken, if the church as a whole would take the approach of honesty and humility rather than perfection, I think that this world would be in a very different place. And I think this experience for me, coming out of the church, being angry at the church, being critical of the church, it wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing because it's made me realize the things that the church needs to work on and the things that I, as part of the church, need to work on as well. And it's also helped me love the church more. Like, you ever have, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but like breakup sex? Like that's not that's not a thing, but like this is almost like, it's almost like that for me. Like I just went through this really, like the worst fight I've ever had with the church. And what God was teaching me through this whole thing was, I love the church. Do you see all this imperfection?
Yeah.
Do you see all of these issues, all these things that you are justifiably angry about? I love this church.
Yeah.
I love the church.
Yeah, I think
and so. That's where I'm at. I'm like, I need to love the church. That's you know, love people.
I think we've been fighting for it because we love it.
Yeah, that's it. That's
I mean,
why
that's why
it hurts so bad.
Critical. Like we have been fighting and, like you said, aggressively just obliterating the church. I mean, at this point, we might have some disappointing listeners who are like, all right, I'm done listening to this podcast because I feel like I was on the same wavelength as
well, I don't think
guys.
We should ever stop being critical, though. So for those of you listening that think it's all just going to go away, hell no. Like, I'm still going to be just as critical because I've learned now that I need to call it out. Like, it's important to call it out. It's important to love and to be patient as well. But it's important not to let these things just, like, you know, slide under the radar because, you know.
Because we're called to be critical and we're called to exercise judgment. And judgment and love can coexist. That's right. In fact, that's what we see in God, and that's the conflict that is difficult to internalize and understand. How can someone have perfect judgment and also exercise perfect love? And yet, God is just that. He's powerful enough to stop it. And he's good enough to care. And both of those things matter, and both of those things play along in perfect unison. And I think what's happened with us is, for a long time, because of our hurt that we've been living in, we have been heavy on the judgment. And we've been fighting for something that we cared about. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even started a podcast about it, because it doesn't matter. We're not sitting here talking about engineering because for us, we're not passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, it's been interesting because almost like on an Instagram feed, you can like scroll back through the last 10 years, right? You can see the different parts of your life, unless you've deleted those posts. And in this way, we have a podcast that catalogs our experience,
our feelings
through hurt to where we are
it's
today. True. And like I said earlier, ultimately, I feel grateful for the time that I had, and I'm at the same time very, very happy to be at the place I am, which is I have a softer tone for the church. It's the same amount and same level of care and concern, but it's a heart thing where I don't look at the church and Christianity the same way as I did even a year ago.
That's right, and I think that's a good thing. Like for me, if I don't see change is hard and hard to accept. But if I don't see it, then I know I'm not growing. Right, and like so for me, like knowing that, okay, a year ago we were having these difficult conversations, these painful, aggravating conversations. They were beneficial, but they were still painful. And here we are now. It's like, okay, I'm seeing change. I'm seeing growth. I'm seeing something coming from this. There, right. So it's huge. But on that note, we've got some really good topics for you guys today. Before we jump into these topics, though, I just want to give a huge shout out to our inner circle, who have been continuing these conversations along with us, and huge shout out actually to Brendan and Sarah. They are two inner circle members who have been with us pretty much since the beginning, and they met in the inner circle and just got engaged. Which is awesome. Still blowing my mind to this moment. So congratulations to Brendan and Sarah. We love you guys. We're so excited for you guys. And if that doesn't say something about this community, I don't really know what will, because it's not a dating site necessarily, but but there are some real conversations and real hangouts that are happening, and some of the inner circle group got together in North Carolina a week ago, and there's real friendships. These people hang out every Wednesday night. Every Wednesday at 9 p.m. EST, you can guarantee there's going to be people there hanging out. So we love you guys so much. We really appreciate your support. And if any of you are interested, you can find out more at patreon.com/holyghostnotes. And that's I'll leave it at that. That's my that's great. Inner circle.
Congrats, guys.
Today.
That's awesome.
Congrats.
And thank you, Inner Circle. So our drum topic today is composing a drum solo is the topic. And so I'll start talking about this. And then I know, Tim, you might feel like you don't have a lot to contribute, but I feel like after I talk about it for a little while, you'll have something to say. As a listener to this, what I would encourage you to do is to think about the composition aspect of your playing or practicing, because that's really what's behind the solo. It's how do you articulate what you have to say on a drum set in a way where you're the only one saying it. Drum solo, it is just you. So it does present its fair share of challenges, but I would encourage everyone listening to this that plays drums to try writing a solo. It's humbling.
It's a good challenge.
It's difficult, but it's a lot of fun. It's a ton of fun. And you might feel like you're not at a place right now where you can do that. Still do it. Because a year from now, you'll look back, and if you've been playing and practicing ever since then, you'll be impressed by how far you come along. And then if you stop playing, you'll be impressed and maybe a little depressed about the fact that you were better, a year ago than you are today.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. I mean, it's easy to laugh at, but man, I know a lot of people who don't feel like they're where they want to be today. And a year from now, they look back and say, man, I should have played. I should have actually done something with that. Okay. Yeah. So, drum solos. So a little bit about drum solos. My experience with writing drum solos. Well, let's go back. So the first time I saw a drum solo was Tony Royster Jr. You've probably seen this video, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Tony Royster Jr. I'd like to play a drum solo for you. I'd like to dedicate this to the late, great Tony Williams. It's like this little kid. What is he, 11, 12, something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
He goes behind this kit, and the throne's probably down the whole way, and yet his legs are still dangling off of it like it's 5 feet in the air.
Barely reach the pedals, yep.
Plays double bass, and he's playing like these intricate patterns with power, precision, and, of course, feel. So I've watched the solo probably more than any other solo ever. What solo have you watched more than any other solo? If you were to guess.
Aaron Spears caught up, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably top of my list there.
Yeah. So that
Tony Royster's up there too, though, for sure.
The Spears solo is interesting because it's him playing. So Aaron Spears played for Usher, and he now plays for Ariana Grande. And he plays. So he played at Modern Drummer Festival 2006, and he played this track, "Caught Up." And he's, of course, going above and beyond the actual playing on the record. But that video had a huge impact and still has like ripples that we see in drumming today. I mean, 15 years ago, it's still legendary. But he was a grown man when he recorded that. And so that it's interesting. Tony Royster Jr. rose to fame at basically 11, as far as I'm concerned. He was just a kid, preteen. And then Aaron Spears was probably in his early to mid-20s. And before that, I don't know that he had a whole lot of recognition. But think about the power of just a video like that, or in that case, a solo.
Yeah.
So a solo can do a lot in launching your career, can do a lot in garnering attention. In my case, that's not the point of a solo. The point of a drum solo for me has always been to sort of, are you familiar with like a nightcap? Before you go to bed, you're going to have a drink and then you're done. Yeah. The drum solo is sort of like the nightcap of our set.
Yeah.
We play the whole show solo, and then we walk off and come out and play an encore afterwards.
Right. Yep.
So it's challenging because we're coming off of the show. And so it has to transition from whatever song is last easily into the solo. It's not just a standalone thing. So in writing a solo, my primary concern at first is speed. So what is the tempo going to be? Most of my solos have lived between like 160 BPM and 185. The solo I played most recently was 173, and that's kind of the sweet spot. So at that speed, once you're determining your tempo, you want to see, okay, how much can I get away with, or what can I execute well at that speed? 16th notes? Okay, I can do that on my feet. I can do that on my hands. Can I play paradiddles at that speed? Okay, cool. All 16th notes. Well, 16-note triplets. Yep, I think I can do that. And then you have an idea of what you can integrate into your solo based on the tempo. So first thing, tempo. That's where it starts. When I was asked to write a solo years ago, JB usually asked me, he's like, hey, you want to play a solo on this tour? And he asked me to write one. I said, sure. I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks writing the solo. And I admittedly wasn't great at it when I brought it to practice for the first time. We had probably 2 weeks before tour, and I played it for the band, and it was pretty sloppy. But I got the point across, right? And I finished, and I could see on all the guys' faces, it was just like, went right over their heads. It was pretty techy, didn't have a lot of double bass, odd time, a lot of rudimentary stuff in there.
Yeah.
A lot of linear stuff in there. But I could tell I didn't hit a home run with it. And so I just straight up asked the guys, I was like, do you like it? Is it good? And they're like, well, I don't know. I feel like it should be more metal. People love double bass. People love blast beats. I think it should have more of that. And while it was frustrating at first, they were 100% right. I was more interested in doing something that I'm not as known for and trying to flex my muscles in other ways instead of just doing what works for me and what works for the band.
Yeah.
I was too concerned about the creative aspect of it. So first, tempo. Second is, who's your target audience? I had sort of forgotten that. I was like, I'm going to be playing for this. I'm going to be playing for this PASIC crowd, where it's a bunch of drummers in a room. No, you're not. There's a percentage of people in the room who are drummers, but some people don't know the difference between a snare drum and a kick drum. Legitimately, they just hear
Fast
sound.
drums.
They just hear, they just hear a drum set. And it's hard to remember that, and it's easy to forget it. And so having someone who has an objective ear hear you play your solo is really important. In my case, I can be so focused on what I'm playing and what I've written that I don't hear anything else. I don't explore their options. And then someone else comes in, they're like, well, I don't really know about this or this or this. You're like, really? I like all those parts. Throw them away, try something else, and then you'll realize, oh yeah, they're right. Especially if they also know the target audience. So I rewrote that solo, put a bunch of double bass in it, and it was sweet. Tempo, target audience, and then I think for me, a solo really has to have structure. And I think this is where I might be met with some eyebrow raising from some drummers. So I'll speak on a personal level. I write a solo and I play it almost the same every night. I play it to a click track. I know how it starts. I know how it ends. I know what's in the middle. And though it might sound like I'm just sort of making it up, I'm not, because I don't perform at the highest level if I'm doing that. Yeah. I'm not as good at improvising as I am writing something and then perfecting that. So you really have to know how you write. But for me, it's about composing something that I've created, I've memorized, and I'm now applying to the kit. And in that way, I can create this dynamic. So the solo I most recently played over Christmas, it started off with this like real simple 4/4 section, and it has these nice tight stops in it. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And on 8, you're stopping for just one quarter note. And that gives the crowd something to latch on to. It starts to create this theme. They know every once in a while, there's just going to be a short little pause, and it's going to be tight. And so that gives them the ability to clap along and sort of wait for this gap, for that space. From there, I then build it into this busy part, and then I slowly bring in double bass. Bring the dynamic way down so it's basically just double bass, and then you're getting people clapping. So sticks in the air, people are now clapping along, start to go crazy again. And in this case, crazy for me is two different things. One, it's the entertainment factor. So how does it look, right? Right hand's up, left hand's up, you're all over the place. And then the other aspect would be that you're playing something that's really technically difficult. That would be another form of crazy. Yeah. You don't have to use difficult musical terms when you're describing stuff like this. Like when I'm talking to the band, we'll talk, we'll use terms like crazy, shreddy, busy, loud, noisy, fast, tight. So, like you're just trying to get the point across. And I would encourage you, if you're writing a solo or you're writing drum parts, just to make it as simple as you can on yourself when you're structuring the parts of the solo or the song. So going back to this, so you have tempo. Tempo is really, really important. You have your target audience. And then what should we call this? The dynamics. Just sort of the tone. We'll call it the tonality. Tempo, target audience, and tonality of your solo. Highs and lows, fast and slow. Keeping in mind that not everybody knows what you're playing. To them, it just sounds and looks a certain way. They're hearing it for the first time. You've heard it 100 times. So all really good stuff to remind yourself as you're going through this.
Yep.
The last thing I'll say is take your phone, which I'm currently recording with mine, and just record a video of yourself playing it. There are going to be parts of your playing that you really felt good about. And after you watch a video back, you're probably going to change your mind a little bit. Wait, that part sounds really dumb, or it sounds really simple, and why does it feel so hard to play? I don't like this part anymore. That has been such a valuable asset for me, is just having my iPhone and being able to record. It's like having someone in the room, a really good friend that's honest, tell you how you just did.
Right.
So I do that. I record the video, I record the solo and I watch it back. I say, all right, I know it's 3 minutes long. I don't like these parts. I'm going to go back and rework those. And then if you're anything like me, once you feel like you have it done, record the whole thing and give your brain a break. We talked about this with Justin Scott.
Yep.
From Instagram. He was talking about you just have to give your brain rest. And it's hard for me to relax and give my brain space if I'm trying to remember all this information and terrified that I'm going to forget it. I know some of you guys that are listening to this know what I mean. This used to be my biggest fear when I was writing like Thrill Seeker, Messengers, Constellations, Leveler. Like, how am I going to remember all these parts? I spent so much time writing them. What if I forget them? Well, now we have this amazing technology that just push a button on a touch screen and it's all there, right? It's all there. So do that as soon as you are done. Do not leave your drum set. Turn on your video, record it the whole way through, and then walk away and give yourself some space.
That's great.
My one of my favorite soloists and drummers is on the wall over here. If you're not watching the video, you can't see, but I have Mike Portnoy over here. And the way that he played with Dream Theater and just the way that he soloed and wrote his parts. When I'm going to write a new solo, I'll go on YouTube and I'll just start searching for guys and I'll see how they structure their solos. I'll see if there's anything that I can learn from them. And I really encourage you, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, man, I want to try this. I want to try to, write my own drum solo. And I'm okay with not being the best in the world right now. I'm okay with the fact that I'm terrified to see where I'm at as a drummer. I get it. I get all that. Go on YouTube and just start searching for some of your favorite drummers and just search Thomas Pridgeon drum solo and just watch. See if there's anything that you can squeeze out of what they're playing that maybe you can integrate. That will push you so much as a drummer because you'll sit and you'll say, I think I could play that. And then you'll start playing it. It's probably going to feel a lot different than how you thought it would when you were watching it. When you bring it home, when you really make it your own on your drum set. The way that you play Thomas Pridgeon's parts, because you're the one playing them, it's going to sound completely different, even if it's the same exact sticking and orchestration.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the extent of it. It takes me forever to write solos. It used to take me like 2 weeks. Now I can get it in like a week or under. But it's just a grind. You just have to put time and energy into it. And then you get to enjoy playing it for people. And just, for some of them, especially drummers, it's the highlight of the show for them. It's cool. Like I know JB's always like, dude, drum solo is my favorite part of our show. I'm like, man, that's awesome. That's crazy. I mean,
because he gets to put the guitar down for a few minutes.
You get to, get a sip of water and clean your, flip-flops.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Does that resonate with you, Tim?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, man. You hit everything. I mean, the biggest thing I was going to add was target audience, and you definitely harped on that. I feel like you almost have to start there.
Yeah.
Know your audience, It's so huge. So I don't have a lot of experience writing solos. I guess solo type things I do have experience in. Transitions, in between songs and stuff can sometimes sound like a solo if the only thing you hear is drums, or if drums are the only thing playing between the end of this song and the start of this one,
Right.
So I have some experience there. I think the only thing I could add to your flawless.
Well, I don't think I've ever talked about drum solos, so I think
hilarious.
It was a great idea for you to bring this up because I was a little overwhelmed at the thought of trying to explain it.
Yeah,
it's like if I were to ask you about your
job,
it's like you know how to do your job well, but to try to explain it to someone that doesn't understand, it's a little intimidating. So I hope it makes sense enough that people can pull what they want from it.
I think you knocked it out of the park. Some of the non-drummers might have trouble understanding.
They've already fast-forwarded through this section.
They've already fast-forwarded. Yeah. Exactly. They're not listening to this anyway. I think the only thing I can add is you guys, so when you were doing the drums with Caleb, you guys had a Griner Kilmer drum day, and you put out a video because you had people come and play solos, and you were judging them, and the winner got a prize or something. And I think I don't remember exactly what you had in that video, but I remember seeing it and thinking, this is the perfect breakdown of what every single drum solo should include. And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was technicality and precision, feel, and then my favorite one, personality. Those things,
Adam Gray,
I feel like you should always incorporate into a drum solo. Because for me, it's like even as a drummer, if I went to a show and the drum solo was just blast beats for 5 minutes, I'd be like, come on.
No thanks.
But I think this is where knowing your audience comes in really well too, is because I've actually been to shows, a couple of your shows actually, where you've done solos, and other shows where people have done solos. I saw a Slipknot show, and Joey was doing like this crazy solo at one point. And as a drummer, I appreciated some of the more technical stuff. But you know what got the people going? When he stopped playing and just started like single kick.
Right.
Dun, dun. That's when people were like, yeah, and I was like, come on, this is like, a 2-year-old could play that freaking thing. But people were into it. So it's like, know your audience, know that you're going to be playing in front of, people who aren't drummers.
By the way, rest in peace, Joey Jordison.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, for sure.
Good soloist, by the way. He had cool solos.
Yeah. Out of all the things that he did best, I think personality was probably the best thing. Precision
was big.
I had some criticism on his 2 a click grid issues, but everything else, I mean, his technicality was great. He had great feel for the style that they were playing, and his personality really shone through. I mean, I think when you're playing a solo and you have to carry 5 minutes of a set by yourself, I think structure is a good way to put it, Matt. I think you need to have some kind of structure, because as a songwriter, if I were to approach the kit in the same way, I'm writing a 5-minute piece.
Right.
It is a song. There has to be structure in that. There has to be dynamic. There has to be, a verse, a pre-chorus, chorus, not necessarily like that, but it has to entertain. It has to flow. It has to move. If I were to get up there and just do double kick the same way, 16th notes for 5 minutes, people would get really bored. People would be like, okay, that's too much, wall of sound. Same thing with blast beats, but you also can't do just, Tony Royster, if you look at a solo of his, he throws in this really fast stuff that I can't even think about ever being able to do. And it's great, but if he did that the whole time, I'd be like, all right, next solo. It's when he comes back and does some interesting stuff, and some simple stuff that it's like, oh, I could grasp that. I can do that. That gets me excited. And it's the same way with writing a solo for people. Know your audience. If you're playing at PASIC, maybe throw some more technical stuff that the drummers will appreciate. If you're playing at your band's show and you know that there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 other drummers in the crowd, dumb it down.
Yeah.
Add more personality. So that's really all I can add, because I think you summed it up really nicely on how to write it. Most of my experience writing drums have been writing parts to a song where the vocals are the utmost importance. So it's how do I write to complement the vocals and the lyrics and the feel of the song. That's most of my experience. In this case, when I'm put in the spotlight, I actually feel pretty uncomfortable, because I don't feel like I'm technically able to do a lot of cool stuff as a drummer,
Right.
but then I remind myself,
Right.
oh, that doesn't matter.
That's right.
I just have to play something entertaining.
Yeah.
So as long as entertainment is at the forefront and you know who you're playing for, I think you can't go wrong.
In closing,
play to a click, of course, all the typical stuff that we talk about, feel,
yeah,
play on beat, play on time,
yeah,
know your parts. I could throw all this stuff in there, but ultimately, if you've been listening to this podcast and now you're at this point, or we're talking about writing a solo, entertainment.
yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, I think in closing, I thought about, while you were talking about something my grandpa used to say about good speakers. My late grandpa, my mom's dad, he would talk about Obama, and he would talk about some of these really proficient speakers and how they put together a speech. And the speech was important, but even more important than the speech was the delivery, which we know in the world of comedy, right? It's like, I can tell a joke that Chappelle tells and no one's going to laugh because I'm not that funny. But Chappelle tells the same joke, and it's his ability to circle back around and grab that, line from earlier, and just amazing. It's an art that I have not mastered. But in the case of a good and proficient speaker, in a lot of cases, they'll start gentle, slow, dynamically low, and they'll build. And they won't let you see everything that they have until the end, so that you can tell, hey, this is a really high point based on the low point where we started. And I try to remember that with solos. Try to build those dynamics in where it's taking the listener somewhere. While you were talking, it made me think of a pastor. A pastor who knows his congregation well is not going to talk at length about theology and doctrine if his congregation's at a point where they're just there to learn, who Jesus is, what he did for them, and how they can live out a life that glorifies him. A little theology will be helpful in putting down roots, but as they leave the church, they're going to need to hear something, that they can relate to. And while you were talking, it made me realize people relate to that boom, 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 boom. They think, oh, I could probably do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm a 2-year-old child. I could play that. And I think you need to give people that in the same way that a experienced pastor or a proficient speaker has the ability to relate to an audience and connect with them. Build your solo in a way that connects with the audience that is there to see it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great way to end off that topic. It's really important. You want them to walk away with something that they understood and appreciated. So
yeah, and maybe in promo for this episode, we can put a segment of my solo up there from the CBR show, and just as an example of like, all right, I talked about it for 20 minutes. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Show me. Don't just tell me. Show me.
Yeah. Show me. I'd like to see it. Yeah, I like that. Cool. So I guess moving on to our faith topic, and as per usual, we didn't leave ourselves a ton of time, but we can hit this. So I've been battling how to label this topic because it's such a broad topic. It started off as just a discussion about things beyond our understanding, and it's kind of moved forward in my mind to perspective. So I'm going to label it perspective for the sake of being simple.
That's good.
And straightforward. But this came about, so when I put my 4-year-old to bed, for whatever reason, the evening time, he gets curious. He wants to know things. So he just asks question after question and after question. I used to say, even when he was like just starting to speak, he would ask these questions, and it would just be, well, why? Well, why? Why? So every answer I had, there was another why. And it just brought me deeper and deeper and deeper until I was exploring like the existential, my God, meaning of life, like level. I was having this basically one-sided conversation trying to explain to my 3-year-old like why we exist. And it started with like, why is it bedtime? Well, because of this, and it's just, and so this happens every night. Last night was no different. I was putting him down, and he was just asking question after question after question. And at some point, I just asked him, like, why are you asking all of these ridiculous questions? And his answer to me was, because I'm a kid. Kids ask questions. That's what we do. And I was like,
Aww.
Wow, like, that was such a like, it hit me. And I was like, dude, you are so smart. Like, and at that point, I was justified in asking that because he was like literally asking me, like, what is the garbage? And I was like, dude, come on now. Like, because he was in that, like, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, why? Well, what is that? Well, what is it? But it still remained in my mind, like, okay, he's a kid. He's going to ask questions. And then I was like, you know what? Like, there's a lot of things, like, I've just been realizing one after another, there's these things in life that I don't understand. I'm realizing more and more as my son is asking these questions, why is God and Jesus the same? How is that possible? Like, why does God not have a mom and a dad? How is God the first? Why? And it's like, I'm trying to answer these questions, but I don't actually know. Like, I don't have, like, I have my theology and I have, these scriptures to base my beliefs off of, but ultimately some of these questions are just so rudimentary and simple, but yet so difficult, and there's just no answer. And it's so, like, how do I explain to a 4-year-old that God just was, and he created everything, but he didn't build our house. No, we built that, but God made the stuff in order for us to build the house. Like, all these questions that just keep coming up, and there's so many things that I don't understand, even just about life. And I realize that I do the same thing to God. In my prayer time, I'm asking questions. They're rarely answered in a audible voice or anything like that. But I have all these questions. I probably have a stockpile of questions that I'm like, as soon as I get to heaven, I'm going to go through these questions.
That's right.
Because there's this whole world of understanding that maybe we don't need to understand. Maybe we can't wrap our minds around it. And that's not me saying, like, let's just give up and not be curious about it. I don't want to get to the place where I'm just like, well, I just won't understand, so I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not gonna ask the question. And this all brings me to this idea of perspective. Matt, you said in our Inner Circle pre-roll that your girlfriend asked, do you think this is the end of the world? Everything that's going on with COVID and politics and Afghanistan and what have you. There's just one thing after another. Like, you can't get away from it. I was thinking the same thing, and I saw a post. Of course, it always starts with that. I saw a post on Facebook or something, and it was a story of a conversation that someone had. They asked one of their elders. She was like 80 something, I believe. They're like, so, like, I bet 2020 was pretty tough for you, huh? And she was like, no, just another year. And they're like, well, how could you think that? 2020, what a horrible year. All these things, a global pandemic, and you have to wear masks, and the political uncertainty and all this stuff. And she was like, no, it's just just another year. Like, and this lady had grown up when there were all these other viruses going around killing people. There was like I guess there wasn't a world war at her age, but there was a war happening at the time. She lived through like the Depression. And so she's just like, no, this is just life. Like, this isn't any different. Like, people are still reacting the same exact way. There's just, it's, the news is easier to find, hear about it on your little device instead of having to buy a newspaper down the road. So it's like everything's the same, and I've just learned to appreciate the things in life, the people around me, the day to day, and reading that for me was really impactful, just with everything that I just said. These questions that I have and not understanding, like, why would God make this happen? Why are there, as my son would put it, bad guys God made them, right? God loves them, yeah. But they're bad, right? Yeah. And God made them? God made them bad? No, well, not really. It's like, I have all these questions. I don't understand. He doesn't understand. I don't understand enough to be able to explain to him how it all works, because I've just been living life accepting these things because I don't understand. And so I want to let you have a chance to talk, and I want to have a conversation about this. But, where I left off with this was just like, there's a lot of things I don't understand. I don't think we should ever stop asking hard questions. I don't think we should ever stop thinking about why things are the way they are. I think that's part of how we're built, how we're made. We were made to be inquisitive and to learn. But at the same time, we can't get to the point where all we see is what's in front of us in the news and in the headlines. Like, for this 80-year-old woman, COVID was another headline. The presidential race was just another headline. Not that you shouldn't take it seriously or that you shouldn't care about it, but like, she's like, what's most important is, what I experience in a day, my morning coffee, the people around me. For me personally, it was my vacation with my family this past week. Like, when I was on vacation, I didn't think about any of this other stuff, and I was happy. I ate and drank around the world in Epcot, and I was very happy. all I had with me was my wife, and it was great. I didn't have to think about anything else. And so I think that there's importance there. But I want to get your perspective on this perspective topic.
Yeah, nice. That was good. I think this is a very relevant topic that we need to talk about. Well, I was at the grocery store today, and I was checking out. There was a lady behind me who had a small cart. I had a ton of groceries because I'm wiped out. Like, my refrigerator's empty. There's a couple like Mountain Dews in there, and I'm like, I need to go to the grocery store. So my cart is loaded, and I was a giant checking out, and I saw the woman behind me, and I'm unloading my cart, and I looked back again. I saw her cart full of like bird seed and some other things, a Brita filter, and whatever else, and I felt this. I felt like God told me. I felt like God was just encouraging me to pay for her stuff. And so finished putting everything on the belt, and she started to put her her stuff on. I said, "Hey, excuse me." I said, "Do you mind if I pay for your for your groceries?" And she said, "What?" I said, "What's your name?" She said, "Bonnie." I said, "Oh, that's my mom's name." She said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd like to pay for your groceries." And she's like, "Oh my gosh." She's like, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Because I would really just like to do that. It's not a big deal. I'd just love to pay for your groceries." So I'm now bagging everything and putting them in my cart. She starts to put her stuff on, and I noticed do you know those little dividers you put in between your groceries? To say the person in front of me is not responsible for this stuff. This is mine. Yeah. I'm going to be paying for this. Yeah, that was there. Yeah. She had put that there. And I look up at her, and I think she could tell like what I was thinking. She said, "You really don't have to pay for my stuff." I said, "I'm not going to pay for your stuff if you don't want me to, but I'd love to." She said, I just can't understand it. And I said, "That's okay. That's all right. You don't have to understand it. Yeah. I just like to do this for you." She was probably in her, I would say, upper 70s, lower 80s. And she said, "Well, thank you so much. I just can't believe this." So I paid for everything and helping her put her bags back in her cart. And I saw some bird seed. I said, "Do you have birds?" She said, "Oh, yes. I love birds so much." She said, "I live at well, I won't mention the name of the home, but she lives at a retirement home, and she has birds." And you could just see she was just lighting up about it. She said, "I'd love birds." And she said, I cannot believe that you're doing this for me right now." She said, "I could cry right now." And I said, "That's all right. You can cry. That's That's okay. I said, I'm just really happy to do this, for you and to meet you. And she put her stuff in her cart and, said thank you. I gave her a hug, and she walked one way and I walked the other. And I walked out of the grocery store, and I thought to myself, funny enough, no one's ever going to know that this happened. I have no need to tell anybody about this. But my first thought was, well, I started tearing up, actually. I started tearing up thinking about this lady and how this, whatever the bill was, it's not all that much. It's just money. It's not a huge deal. It was so contrary to what her experience is in the world that it shocked her. So much so that she really didn't have any other words to describe what happened. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is because it created this awe and wonder in her and also in me. So the awe and wonder in her was, why? What's the motivation? What's behind this? I don't understand. I need to figure this out. I'm not sure about this, right? There was this hesitation because it's so contrary to what our society has shown her, especially, I would argue, recently, which is just like a lot of takers, a lot of fear, a lot of alternative motives, hidden motives, agendas. And then for me, it created this awe and wonder of God gave me the greatest gift of all. And for me to give just a small slice of something to someone else gives me a sense of appreciation and just awe and wonder for what God did for me. It reminded me a little bit. And I fast forwarded, I got to my truck and I fast forwarded to my funeral. It sounds sort of morbid, but I fast forwarded to my funeral. I died, and there's a eulogy. And my dad or my mom are giving a eulogy, and let's say this lady came to my funeral. And she got up to the mic and she said, I was a giant one day, and this man that I didn't know paid for my groceries. And it brought me to tears thinking about this, and I think it goes back to an idea by Tim Keller where he says all the greatest movies in the end will be proven true. The stories behind the greatest movies ever shot and released, we will find out that they're true because they all point us back to Jesus. And I think the reason it resonated so much with me is because just imagine someone telling you that someone did something for them and it meant so much to them, right? Just imagine that it's my funeral and someone that hardly knew me is talking about something I did for them. Now, expand on that and multiply that times a gazillion, billion, trillion, and you won't even be halfway to what Jesus did for us. And yet, we're being told that that's being spoken over us at our funeral, that actually it's not the end, that there's more to our legacy, that this isn't it. And so talk about perspective, man. I mean, we got a short little blip here. We got 80 years, maybe. I hope to be 80. 75's fine too. If I live to be 90, I'm going to be looking at my drum set wishing I could play it, But seriously, we lose sight of the fact that it's not all about us, and that what was given to us has been given to us. What we have, even spiritually aside, take Jesus out of it, take Christianity out of it, wherever you are in your faith or non-faith, what we have is so great. And if we sit and look at it and say, man, let me just sit in this place of appreciation and gratitude for what I do have, then it creates this awe and wonder in us that will bring us to tears because we can't believe how much we have to be thankful for. For me, it really goes back to the band. It goes back to my job. And I think all of us, regardless of what we're doing right now, if we're working in a blue-collar job, or we're an HVAC technician, we're a landscaper, or we're working in an office setting like you, Tim, I believe that God's given us our jobs for more than just the time it takes to get the job done, for more than just the money that we make from doing the job. I believe that God's given us what's needed to glorify him, to give ourselves joy in our work, and also to love other people. And I think that if we remember all of that, it gives us this sense of hope and pride and purpose that gives us fortitude against all the nasty headlines. And when someone says, "Do you think it's the end of the world?" our response is, "No, I really don't think it is." And underneath of that thought is the thought, even if it is, it's okay. I'm going to live out today and this week and this month doing what I can with what I've been given. The thing that upsets me, and I think upsets you, Tim, about all of this mentality of like end times, this end times discussion and the Left Behind book series and movie series, for me, it's upsetting because it negates what I believe God's purpose for us here is, which is to enjoy our time here.
That's right.
It's to enjoy the relationships we have. It's to enjoy him. And like C.S. Lewis used to say, there's more of heaven on earth than what we'd like to imagine. I'm just sort of paraphrasing. And there's more hell on earth. It's not like we live our lives, get to the end of it, die, and then there's heaven, and then there's hell. No, I believe there's a lot here. There's a lot of both, actually. And the apocalyptic doom and gloom, end times, Left Behind mentality, I think robs people of the joy that we were designed to experience here.
I 100% agree, man. It's you can almost say it's a coincidence that like everything you just said is so in line with my thoughts recently. Actually, so the first day I got back from vacation, I attended a funeral of a close friend, and it seems to be happening more and more as I get older, as to be expected. You know, in the last couple months, I've attended a few, and it's always tough. But so this specific funeral that I went to, same thing, made me kind of fast forward to my funeral. So this funeral was packed to the nines. There wasn't enough seats for people. This guy packed out the place, and so that started me thinking. I was like, I wonder if I will have impacted this many people who would actually come to my funeral when I die. I was thinking, was I a nice enough person, or a caring enough person? Did I make enough relationships? Did I make people love me enough to actually want to come to my funeral? And it was almost like a split second later, this guy's wife comes up and she says, Dave wouldn't want you all to be here because he wouldn't want you to take the time of day for him. He wouldn't want you to make a big deal out of this. And right in that instant, I was like convicted of my own thoughts, thinking like, how could I pack out my funeral? How do I make sure that I have this many people come to celebrate my life? And I was like, well, the reason there's so many people here today is because Dave does not care about himself.
Yeah, that's right.
He spent his entire life loving people, and later someone went on. It was actually my brother went on to say a few words and just said like the thing that was special about Dave is that he made you feel like you were the most important person in his life. He made you feel like like you were his favorite, and that was what was so special about him. And I had to agree. I was like, man, if you were to ask me, I would be like, yeah, I think I'm probably Dave's favorite. I'm probably the one that he likes the best, because that's how he made me feel. And so like he was onto something. Like that's how we should be living. And taking this back to our conversation about the church, what I've learned over the past few years with all of this frustration, animosity towards the church, is that God was showing me the disgusting. He was showing me the worst parts. And then ultimately where he brought me was, I love this. I don't love the disgusting parts, but I love the church. I love this, and I need you to love it too. Like that's where he brought me. So it was, love is always, and that's where your inkling to pay for this woman's groceries came from. It was love. It might not have been like oh, I love this woman, so I need to do this. It was, God loves me so much, and I just want to show someone a portion of that love. Like that's how we need to be living. Mm-hmm. And how much satisfaction did you walk away from that day? I mean, obviously enough to remember it and talk about it on the podcast today, right? I mean, like, for me, like, everything that I can think of is that has really stuck with me as the most impactful moments in my life are things that I've done for other people. It wasn't that really cool gift that I got from somebody, or, you know, that thing that I did for myself that one day. It's all when I was serving somebody, or when I was doing something for this person, or when I went out of my way to help. That's when I walked away with the most satisfaction. It's because it's twofold. Love isn't just a simple, like, I'm going to love someone and we'll leave it at that. Like, you get replenished because it's ultimately not our love. And that's real confusing, and I don't want to go too deep into that. But that's what I think. It's like, when you pour out love, you get refilled with love, and getting refilled with love is one of the best things in the world. So let's keep pouring out that love so that we can keep getting refilled.
Yeah, I think I want to speak to those that are in the place that we were in, and you're looking at all of this and you're going, I see what you're saying. I guess I can't disagree with it, but I'm not there. I would say I would remind myself and you, Tim, and I would speak to that in bringing up this a lady that I was listening to recently talk about resilience, about resilient people. And she made 3 points. The first point, funny enough, the only one that I can remember of the 3, is resilient people know that shit happens.
Yeah.
And when she said that, I realized that's been most of our frustration with the church. It's been that the church has failed in teaching myself and you and much of our generation that shit happens. And so when it does, you're preached at with a bunch of bogus theology that says you need to pray harder, you need to speak different things into existence, you need to change the course of whatever's happening. You did something to deserve this, you know? And so all of that is weight for you to bear, right? All of that is weight for you to bear. Nonsense.
True.
Nonsense. All right? Shit happens to everybody. Yeah. And the sooner that we remember that pain and suffering doesn't play favorites with good and bad, with those that are living their lives in an upright, righteous fashion, and those that don't. Life is a broken state. And the sooner that you realize that marriage is tough, that relationships fail, that substance abuse is a reality, that depression and anxiety are common, that there's war, that there's pandemics, that there's viruses, that there's pain and suffering and disease and sickness and death. I mean, all of this doom and gloom that we see in the news, the reason that it's so difficult for the church to handle, I believe, is that we have not addressed the fact that shit happens. And in order to be a resilient person, you don't ignore that fact. You actually take it in and sit in it and realize that it's true. And then put all of your faith and stock in Jesus as a Christian who faced pain and suffering, and shit happens. I mean, death, right? Death. And took it and beat it for you and for me. And so you can face that pain and suffering knowing that someone else did to a degree you'll never even realize. And you'll walk out of that grocery store like I did today, or like that lady hopefully did today, where she just couldn't believe that was true. And meanwhile, everything else is falling around you, falling to the ground and burning up. I mean, the world is on fire, and yet it doesn't really touch you because you've come to terms with the fact that we live in a broken world and that you are also broken. You are also broken. And,
That's right.
And from that brokenness, you can find healing. And it's why I think so many of our listeners, so many of you guys listening to this, guys and girls listening to this, this resonates with you because you also agree with the fact that like it's upsetting that Christianity turns its back on those that aren't fitting the template or don't look the right way or don't have all their ducks in line. And it's like, wait, like where do I fit in? Like I need to be honest about all of this. And I don't feel like I can be honest and also be inside of that, denomination or that church. And so I would just speak to you if you're in that place and just encourage you to sit in that place actually, and don't deny yourself the time you need to heal and pray through it. But also encourage you to know that Tim and I are, we've been working through this for years, and we're at a place now that's just a little bit different in our perspective towards the church and Christianity. But it's really because of the time we spent dealing with it, fighting against it, hating it, kicking it around, seeing what it's made of,
Yeah, that's right. One of my favorite verses, and I don't even know which passage it is, but it says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And that always hit me growing up, was like, okay, well, God's here, so bring on the freedom. Now, my perspective has changed a little bit, and it's like, if I'm not experiencing freedom, then the Spirit of the Lord isn't in it. And so that little flip-flop there kind of changed, similar to JB's flip-flop. I'm just kidding. That little change of thinking, that little revelation, is now how I test a lot of things. It's my litmus test. If there's not freedom here, then it's probably the Spirit of the Lord isn't in it, right? And so, as you said, this pain, it's sometimes necessary. Obviously, it took Matt and I this amount of time to come to this place, and we're still going through it. I am by no means at the end of this road, but what I can say is that, like, it's not a burden that you need to bear. There's no freedom in carrying that around, which means that the Spirit of the Lord isn't in that. Maybe the Spirit of the Lord was in your decision to leave your church, or to recognize the faults in some of these people. But ultimately, the Lord is not in you carrying that around. So you can let it go. I want to end with this tweet, actually, that I saw. It was from Ron Rolheiser. I don't know who he is, can't vouch for him. But I just thought about this when we were talking, and the quote is, it's not being involved with church because of the church's faults is often a great rationalization. But what is too painful to deal with is not the church's imperfections, but my own fantasies about my own goodness. I love that quote because, we've been talking about, deconstruction, talking about our faith. Obviously most of us will recognize, like, it's not an issue with God, it's an issue with the church. It's an issue with these people. But when we abandon the church because of their imperfections, we're doing exactly the same thing. Right? We're saying, oh, I don't struggle with those things, so I'm above them. That hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I had to digest that for weeks. And that has helped me come to this place too. Those two things, just let it go. It is not my burden to carry. Can I be angry about it righteously? Yes. 100%. Do I need to carry it around with me? No. Does it have to be my prerogative to deconstruct everyone's idea of the church and Christianity? No, of course not. I'm working on myself because I have all these issues that I'm trying to work on, and I've been internalizing. And this pain that has been speaking through, the things that I say, not that everything I've said in the past 2 years are completely inaccurate and came from this place of anger and feelings. I don't want to say that, but I will say, some of it was just a failure to admit that I have my faults too. And
that's a great point.
that's not necessarily going to get me back into my old church, but it will help me understand and will help me be a little bit more sensitive and loving towards, towards people.
Yeah.
Because God loved me. God loves me, despite everything that I know that I do. And so I have no reason not to love anyone else, regardless of what they do.
That's great.
So, little perspective for you guys.
That's good stuff, man. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to this podcast. We really appreciate all of you. In case you missed it, Tim talked about a couple who met in our inner circle, which is our basically the way we stay alive as a podcast. We've been running a long time. We really appreciate everyone that supports us. If you're interested in signing up, we have a Patreon that you can sign up for. It's called the Inner Circle. There's a lot of perks there. Once again, if you're listening for the first time, just thank you. Thank you very much for checking this out. And we're happy to have you on board. If you've been with us for a lot longer, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. And in addition, I want to thank the Inner Circle group, not just for their financial support, but a number of you just in the past week reached out to me with encouragement, actually, just thanking me and Matt for our work with the podcast and for the effort that we put into it. And honestly, that for me goes even further than the money. Like, we'd probably still be trying to do this even if we weren't getting paid to do it, right? But the encouragement, just hearing that you guys are benefiting from this, and that it's helping us, making a difference in some way, is really, really huge. And it seemed like it was all within like 3 days that a bunch of you just reached out to me and just gave me some encouragement. So I appreciate that. Love you guys. And thanks again to all of you listening. If you have any thoughts, questions, feel free to reach out to us, Matt and Tim at theholyghostnotes.com, or any of the socials, instagram.com/holyghostnotes. And if you're on Instagram or Facebook, make sure if you're posting your drum videos to use the hashtag #HolyGhostNotes to potentially get featured as our Groove of the Week. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, drop us a rating real quick. Doesn't have to be 5-star. We'd love it, but, give us a fair rating. Give us what you think
That's
we're
right.
worth. We can take it.
Thanks, Sam. This has been great.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Yeah, love you
man.
too, buddy.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Peace.